Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 14 of the Adams Mystery Playhouse Podcast. Adams Mystery Playhouse is Colorado's only full-time mystery dinner theater. I am your co-host, Nick Guida, and with me today, as always, is my partner in crime, Marn Wills Cuellar. And how are you today, Marn?
Stop it, Bella, stop it. That was my chihuahua. I am so sorry. She interrupts all of my Zoom calls and everything. I'm doing great, but guess who we have as our guest today, Nick?
We have a guest today? Well, that's unprecedented. Who is the guest?
Marco Alvarado. How are you doing today, Marco?
Well, my dog died, my wife divorced me, and my son's in drug rehab. But I just saved a bunch of money on my car insurance by switching to Geico. 15 minutes can save you 15. Well, anyway, you get the idea.
Oh, God. You're just always joking everywhere.
Yeah, I know. I'm okay. I'm actually doing okay. So, how's everybody else?
Oh, we're hanging in there. You know, I'll never forget the time my daughter and I, this is fairly recently, maybe in the last couple of years, we were at Mustard's Last Chance on University Boulevard, and I'm standing in line, and Marco comes up from behind me. And what did you did something that just scared the pants off of me. What'd you do?
I saw you from across the street, right across the street, and I did what I did. I snuck up behind you, Mark, walking almost in lockstep with you, real close behind you. Then I think I grabbed you on the shoulders or the waist or something. Marty, hey, how you doing? You just jumped. Yeah, yeah. You turned around and you screamed. Yeah.
Yeah, I did scream. I did scream. But you know, out of all the people in our clan, Marco, you and I have known each other the longest. I've known you longer than Nick. I've known you longer than my husband, Carlos. I've known you longer than Dougie Proctor, because we started doing stand-up together at the Comedy Works in, was it 80?
Yeah, back in the early 80s, actually, when I moved up to Denver. Yeah, and I got some old pictures of you back then. And I remember when you were with improv group then back, Split Personality, I think. Is that what it was?
Oh, right. Yeah, I totally forgot about that one.
And I was doing gigs with you, not just at the Comedy Works, but other one-nighters around town, some of the open mics and some of the professional mics and all that stuff. And yeah, you and I just way back when you were across the board. You were back in the day when there were only, what, 2 female stand-ups, I think? And
There were 2 of us, Marco. That's right. Myself and Roseanne Barr. That was it.
Yep, that was it. You and Rosie. Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did I tell you I saw her? She had a book signing about 4 years ago at the Tattered Cover. And I walked up to her and she said, "Do you want this autographed?" And I said, "Roseanne, it's me, Marnie." And she just went, I can't use the words that she used. But oh my God, I don't believe, that kind of thing. But yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know, you go back way back in the Denver comedy scene with all the old timers, all the guys from the original people that started
Yeah.
comedy in the state of Colorado. Back, Comedy Works opened officially September 1981.
Oh my gosh. Well, I must have been one of the first ones on the dock. Who was the owner of that, Marco? I'm trying to remember.
Ed Nichols.
Oh yeah, that. Yeah. How could I
Yeah.
forget that? Ed Nichols.
Yeah,
of
it was
course.
actually
Yeah.
originally him and George McKelvey
Mhm.
co-owned it in the beginning, and then somehow Ed edged him out or bought him out, did something, but he ended up owning it. Now it's Wendy Curtis, of course.
Yeah.
Comedy Works has always had it's only just 2 owners, but yeah,
Mhm.
you've been around from ground zero, that's for sure.
Boy,
Yeah.
I learned a lot of comedy tricks and rules and uh,
Yeah.
ways to perform comedy from George McKelvey. He really gave me a lot of golden nuggets, and
Yeah, George, he'd been doing comedy. He did comedy with Lenny Bruce.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
way back, back we're talking early '60s, latter '50s or something. He was around him and Ralph Achilles, and some of the legends Yeah, I learned a lot from him too, Martin. I sure did. It's been a wonderful ride.
Oh, it has. It has. Do you remember when we used to perform at Jeff Valdez's in Colorado Springs?
Yes, yes, I certainly do. I was there that night. He opened October 1983. First night he opened that club. Yeah, I remember you down there, and me down there, and it was a great club too. And we
Hmm.
were, you and I were doing the age of what's it called, the golden age of comedy, the golden times back then. Boy, it was a new thing in this country, and
Hmm. Yep.
wow,
Hmm.
it was so unique and different, and everybody's coming out to see shows, and it was a gold mine for everybody.
Yeah, it really
And
was. Yeah, and remember how people like Ed Nichols and George McKelvey would say, "Well, this is going to die out. I mean, it's just started. Give it a few years, and it'll die out." And it really didn't.
yeah, I kept going and going and going, and went a lot longer. It did. You're right. The golden era. You and I were, yeah.
Do you remember when Gary Mizell approached us to do a minority TV show? And that was
Yes,
in,
that
yeah.
was early '90s, I think. Uh,
Oh,
really early or latter '80s, something like that. But yes, it was very unique, very different, and first of its kind. I remember it was you, myself, Jake Pardee, Daryl Collier. I
hmm.
think maybe Sherry Coca Candelaria, I don't know, some other people. And then it was so original and different and cool. And then I remember just that almost that same year, later that year, something hit the air, hit the TV waves, and it was what was it called? In Living Color.
Hmm. Right.
In Living Color took our whole
Hmm.
gig. That
Yeah.
was our whole gig right there. And they went national, and they were a hit overnight
Yep.
nationwide. Yep.
Hmm.
And that's exactly what you and I, but what we were shooting for,
Exactly.
same formula at the same time, but they got theirs up and national before we did. Yeah, the
It's a
timing
race.
would have been better on that. We'd be in a different spot. You and I would be living in LA right now.
Marco, do you remember when we started the all Hispanic improv group? Yeah, Mixed Up Human Being.
And we ended up going on tour on that one too. Yeah, you sent us. Yeah, you sent us to Alaska, the North Pole, the Arctic,
Hmm.
for a DoD tour, Department of Defense. Yeah, we went overseas on that one. That was very original.
That was you and Jimmy Abeda and
Yes.
Sherry Coca Candelaria
Yeah.
and Jake Pardee. And who else was that? The four of you that went on the tour? I don't.
No, the other one that went on tour was Ann Abeda from Colorado Springs.
Oh, that's
Stand-up
right.
comedian. Yeah, she's Latino. All of us were Latino, and four of us. We went overseas on that one, and that was very original. We did Civic Center near downtown Denver, the
Oh,
Hispanic area.
oh, that was one of the greatest gigs I ever did in my life, and I think this is the one you're talking about. Was it Cinco de Mayo, Marco, on Santa Fe Avenue when they
Yes,
blocked the street off?
yes,
Yeah,
yep.
and yeah, and we were in the well, it's now Su Teatro, but at the time it was Denver Civic Center, right? Or
Yes. Uh huh.
yeah, and there were 100,000 people on the street, and we would stand outside and call kind of street barker and call people in to see Next Up Human Beings, and then people would come in and we'd fill that little black box theater. And we do like a 20-minute show, 20 minutes, and then they'd leave. And then we go out and we did 5 shows that day.
Yeah, yeah. I remember. Okay, I believe that. It could have even been more for all I know, but I know we kept rounding them in and out, in and out, in and out all day. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
And everybody, by the end of that whole thing, everybody was so well tuned together. The whole group, everything was so original about that whole concept, Marnie, that you came
Yeah.
up with. And we all just fit in greatly on that. Yeah. I still got some of the old posters on that from the tours.
I used to love it when Sherry would play the little old Latina grandmother,
Oh,
and
yes.
and she'd go, "Mija, come in. I want to give you some tortillas." And
Yeah,
oh, she
yeah.
just
Yeah, she played that role. Oh my God. Yeah, she was just converting to an old grandmotherly lady. Oh, very, very talented. Everybody, you worked with so many talented people over the years, Barney. You really have. It's, my God, with Roseanne all the way back to the beginning, and It's just like I said. I like when we were overseas. I love that one jacket with all the comics bought for you. Marnie, was it Marnie International Productions or something? Or
Yes, the red satin jacket, and I still have that, and it's gorgeous. It looks kind of like folks, if you can picture, almost like a boxer, except I'm a very small person, so it's it's a red satin with a yellow trim, and then on the back
yeah,
a huge embroidered like the world.
the world,
It's
the globe. It has the globe.
the,
Yeah.
the globe, and then it says Marnie International Productions, and that was so nice of you to bring me that, Marco.
Oh, yeah, you deserved it. I thought it was so cool. When you start going international like you have and booked so many actors and actresses and stand-up comics all over the damn world, Marnie, it doesn't get any bigger than that. It just doesn't. You're covering the world, and with the DOD and Pacific Air Force and USO, and at one point we had 2,000 bases worldwide. 2,000, and
Yeah.
that's a lot of bases around the world. And like I said, you were booking all the comics. I never just knew you as Marty International Productions, and really
Thank you.
that was something really really to be proud of. And the different tours I've done. I've done actually 7 of them now, I believe, 7 overseas.
Tell
And
me, what is your most, I mean, you had so many experiences out there, but are there one or two experiences that just kind of amazed you or blew your mind or what?
yes, one comes to mind immediately, and it was amazing. July of 1993, I ended up getting this uh, overseas tour. I was through another agency. No, it wasn't. It was a band that was going over, asked me to go over with them. Mogadishu, Somalia, Africa. Uh,
Whoa.
entertaining the United Nations peacekeeping forces from 36 nations around the world in one spot. It was during the President Bill Clinton administration. I went there, it was a combat zone, only spent about 10 days there, entertained 36 nations, and it was hot. It was, oh my gosh. Anyway, there were a lot of terrorists there, and we were shot at, believe it or not, 3 or 4 times, came in under firefight. Once right in the middle of a show, in the middle of my show, I couldn't believe it.
Oh boy.
They had to cut. It was on 4th of July. I saw a lighting flare go up behind the stage about 100 yards, and I thought, oh, that's nice, 4th of July, fireworks. No, it was a lighting flare because there were snipers approaching the perimeter of the fence firing.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I had to jump on my belly. They turned off the lights. I had to crawl off the stage in the
Oh,
middle of my show on my belly. They were shooting at us. I'm like, I've heard of bombing on stage, but this is ridiculous. And anyway, long story short, the last show I did there is in front of all the brass and the generals and the politicians and the ambassadors and the envoys, the political envoys and the military intelligence, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of that show, Boutros Ghali, it was his aide. He walked up on stage, third most powerful man in the world, walked up on stage, gave me an award on
oh,
behalf of the United Nations forces. Men and women from 36 foreign countries, huge crowd, stood up, gave me a rousing standing ovation,
oh,
and then all popped to attention and saluted me in unison.
oh
All at
my.
the same, they saluted me, and I'm standing there with my award on behalf of the White House, the Clinton administration, the United Nations, the world body of this earth. And I started getting emotional, started crying, and that was my highest point right there. That the terrorists could have shot me dead on stage. It doesn't matter. I would have done what God put me on this earth to do. It come full circle. I really had. And I was 36 years old.
Oh my gosh. That is
That was the
absolutely.
highest moment in my
Hmm.
life, right? That's something I wish my parents would have been in the audience to witness.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
and I still have those 5 awards at home up on my wall from that 10-day tour. They made a movie about it some years later called Black Hawk Down. And it won
Really?
yes, directed by Ridley Scott, and it won an Oscar at the Hollywood Academy Awards.
Oh my gosh. I did
Yeah,
not know any of
yeah,
that, Marco.
yeah. It was made a movie about it. And what else was there about it? Yeah, it's in the history books now. The Battle of Mogadishu. There are 3 Medal of Honors given out doing that. And I entertained a lot of those people. It was just such an honor, all those countries and all the people. Um,
Well, of course, you travel very easily. You grew up in a military family, and you were in the Navy
yeah.
yourself, right, Marco?
Yes, yes. I'm a veteran. I was post-Vietnam, right after Vietnam. I went in. I was peacetime, Marty. I was peacetime. Although I was an Air Force brat, by the time I was 10 years old, I'd been to 8, 9 different schools, 4, 5, 6 different states, 2, 3 foreign countries, and I spoke 3 languages by the time I
Wow.
was 10 years old. And my father was World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. And my
My,
mom was in the Korean War. So that's how they met. But yeah, I'm a military brat. And you were raised didn't you graduate from high school in Colorado Springs like I did?
yes, I didn't do a lot of touring from different countries. I
Okay.
stayed in Colorado Springs and went to 2 different school districts, but that's all I have.
Oh yeah, I remember you were down there close to Fort Carson and NORAD, Cheyenne Mountain,
Mm-hmm.
where
Yep.
my dad retired from. So
Oh,
yeah, I know you moved around a little bit, but you're real familiar with the military and what you've done for them and the people you sent everywhere around the world. So that's just really cool. It just is. That's what you were known for, more. That was your reputation among all the comics, all the entertainers
wow.
across the board in Denver. You were the go-to lady if they wanted to really open up their career and really travel.
Oh,
You know.
well, those were good days. Thank you, Marco. And that I was
Yeah.
telling my daughter that the way that came to me was so such a gift from God. I was
Yeah.
looking for a job, and
Hmm.
I interviewed with this woman, and she worked out of her apartment from a little card table. And as I came in, and she said, "Well, I really don't need another agent. You can see it's just me and my card table." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I'm in this comedy group." And she said, "Comedy group?" And that was Kathy Bednar. And it just
Oh,
took off from there. And it's just amazing the doors that open, and you don't even
yeah.
know it's going to happen.
You're right. Yeah, you're right. You never know about this business. You just don't. And, back in the day when you started and everything else, and I moved up here from Colorado Springs, we had the chance to work. You know who would come through the Comedy Works once a year, every year? Be like Ellen DeGeneres, Jerry Seinfeld, Tim Allen, some of
Hmm.
those people. Once a year, every year they come in. Bill Hicks, and I used to work with them. We opened for them. This was before they even made it big, Marnie,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember Ellen DeGeneres, we'd be backstage, and my daughter asked me, she said, "Would she remember you?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't think so. I'm not like Roseanne did, but
Yeah.
I certainly spent a lot of time talking to Ellen. So yeah. Let me ask you, I mean, talk about talking shop. What do you think the trick to doing stand up is? What makes it work?
What makes it work? I learned that from George McKelvey. So simple. It's so simple. And he said this about people before on stage. I've heard him say it about certain acts. You'll look at him or like the amateur nights goes, they don't know funny. They don't know what funny is. So you got to know what funny is. Real simple. There's George told me once, the only rule in comedy, there's only one rule in comedy, Marco. And I said, "What's that, George?" There are no rules. That's
Oh,
the there are no. It's open. And I to this day I believe him. There's no hard fast. There's certain unwritten rules, of course. Originality. You don't steal jokes. You don't steal someone else's jokes.
hmm,
There's comics that have the reputation of that out there. Once that you get that reputation, it's over for you. You have to be original. I do believe that one.
yeah, yeah.
But other than originality and don't steal, Michael Florwax told me once back then. You remember Florwax?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And when I was an amateur, he said, "Marco, all you got to do to make it is 5 simple things. Number one, you don't, a certain percentage of these comics will weed themselves out with either drugs or alcohol problems. The other percentage, they're hard to work with. No one likes them. They're kind of a-holes. They'll weed themselves out. And then the other percentage is some of them aren't even funny. They have no business in this business. They'll weed themselves out." and that leaves just a small 10% or whatever that are, they're funny, they're easy to work with, they don't have drug or alcohol problems, and they'll make it. That's all. You just make it in that small percentage.
Yeah.
And he's of course, he's been straight along for a long time, and I've been, so yeah, I followed his lead on that one. But other than that, Maureen, that's about it. I don't claim to have any real secret to it or whatever. You just keep doing it, keep doing it. I've seen comics that started out, they weren't funny at all, Martin.
Yeah.
They were pretty bad on stage. They kind of sucked. And, they just keep doing it. 6 months, a year later, they're funnier. And a couple of years later, they're hilarious, so it's like any business, you learn. You just keep at it and learn.
I think the hardest part of it is writing the material. That's what I really struggled with.
Yes, I'm in the same boat with you, Marnie. That's my weak spot as a comedy performer, as a stand-up, is I'm a slow writer. Always have been. Also, it took me years and years to come up with 45 minutes of viable material, 45 minutes an hour of viable stuff.
That's a long time. I mean, and if you do what McKelvey's, am I remembering correctly that he said you need a laugh in the first 3 seconds? Am I remembering that right?
Yes, and then, pretty quick, right up front. You got to get,
And then you got to be able to get one, what was it?
Every 10 seconds or something like that throughout. I timed myself on that. Yeah, my average laugh was, especially my comedy competition, when I went in comedy contest, I would get a laugh every 4 to 7 seconds.
Oh my gosh.
A laugh. Boom, boom. The rapid fire humor. That's what I'm used to.
Okay,
I'm used to,
I'm doing the math here. If you get a laugh every 6 seconds and in an hour, okay, wait a minute. That's almost 400 laughs an hour.
We do hope you enjoyed our interview with Marco Alvarado, and now let's move on to the next portion of the podcast. We'll start with the solution. Last episode's mystery, the Holden Road murder. Had Miss Wilkins, the maid, dashed in the front door as she said she did, there would have been foot tracks in the vestibule. Remember, the professor splashed his way through the mud and rain to the door at 27 Holden Road and found the vestibule spotless. Therefore, Miss Wilkins was lying, and as Cannon corroborated her story, he was also involved. And now let's move on to this episode's mystery, Bloody Murder. Marn will be the narrator, Marco will play Reynolds, and I will be Professor Fordney. So here we go with Bloody Murder. A bad mess, this,
said Professor Fordney to Sergeant Reynolds as they viewed the bloody scene.
Yeah, I wish these guys wouldn't be quite so thorough when they bump themselves off,
replied Reynolds as he sat grimly to work. A man with his throat cut, the head almost severed, sat slumped over a blood-splattered desk. What a horrible sight. His blood-stained coat flung across the room. The razor, the shirt, the tie, his hands covered with blood made a ghastly and awesome picture, framed by the flickering light of a dying candle. After turning on the lights, Fordney bent down to take a closer look at the man.
His face seems vaguely familiar, Sergeant, but I can't recall at the moment where I've seen him. How long has he been dead?
About 2 hours, according to the police surgeon.
At this moment, the telephone rang. The caller, upon hearing Fordney's voice, immediately disconnected.
Odd. I remember now where I saw this man. His name is Thompson.
As Fordney glanced around, he observed that the alarm clock on the dresser had stopped just 2 hours and 15 minutes before. The telephone rang again, and Fordney motioned Reynolds to answer.
Hello, Mr. Thompson? I stepped out for a few minutes. Leave your number. I'll have him call you.
Better trace that call, Sergeant. This is murder.
What? It still looks like suicide to me.
So what do you think? Was it murder or was it a suicide? And there you have it for this episode. We'd like to thank our special guest today, Marco Alvarado. Thank you for joining us, Marco.
Thanks for having me. Great being here this morning.
And as always, Marn, thank you for joining us.
Billy, stop it. No. No. She's biting my leg. Thank you. Okay. Take care. Good to have you.
And join us again for the next episode of the Adams Mystery Playhouse Podcast.